Good morning, afternoon and evening, ESPers, or should I say, worldies. I'm trying to work out what I should call you, but I'll get round to it. Without further ado, I'm going to tell you what's coming up. We've got a rundown of the World Cup Groups A to D. When I say we, it's just me, really, and you, of course, so I suppose it is we. Anyway, after that, it's quiz time, or perhaps I should do the quiz time before. ESP, what does it stand for? You may well ask me. Extra special passion, I've put that down. Every sacred pass, or even something polite. Why does it have to start with every? No particular reason. Anyway, you make your mind up, let me know. You know how to communicate with me, don't you? Well, if not, it's about time you learnt. And you might even get an extra special prize, ESP again. Yeah, the extra special prize would be a free copy of an online football magazine of world renown. Not any sort of renown, we're talking worldy. All right, so worldy is the word for today. I'll tell you what, we're going to waste no more time. We're going to get straight into Group A. And Group A, obviously very interesting because it has, in fact, got the team that's won the World Cup more times than any other team, Brazil. And Brazil looking in pretty decent form, you've got to say, when you look at their recent results. They managed to beat Honduras 5-0. Anyone listening from the England camp? 5-0 they beat them away from home. That was tail end of last year. And then after that, they managed to beat Chile. They actually beat South Africa 5-0 away from home as well. So in a way, perhaps it's a shame they are playing at home in this competition, but nonetheless, they beat Panama, not exactly titans of the world game, beat them 4-0 and Serbia 1-0. So they've had pretty good preparation, you might say. And if you didn't say that, then you'd be pretty silly, wouldn't you? The goalkeeping situation, they've got Julio Cesar, of course, of QPR fame, excellent goalkeeper. Was hoping at one stage that Arsenal would buy him, but obviously that never happened. Players that we know, there's so many. Dani Alves, Thiago Silva, David Luiz of Chelsea, of course, Maxwell, another very good player, Mason, and, well, it's a long list of excellent players. Willian, who I'm often calling Will-I-An for some unknown silly reason. Hulk, who's been linked with Arsenal. Don't think that's going to happen, as in no chance. Neymar, of course, who could be the player of the tournament. Everyone's saying he's pretty young still, but he's certainly been in the public eye a lot because for the right reasons, really. Mostly, you've got to say he's a top footballer. Doesn't get much better than that. Number 9 sounds like a guy from London, really, but his name's Fred. And then we've got Joe, the number 21. So their squad, pretty strong, you've got to say. Where is the weakness in that squad? I don't even know if you can really think about any other team winning the World Cup, but perhaps we can only say perhaps the pressure of being such hot favourites will get to them. Well, the other teams in the group, we've got Cameroon, of course. Cameroon have got a decent history in the World Cup. Obviously, they gave Argentina, the World Cup holders at the time in 1990, a bit of a shock when Cameroon first played in the World Cup. They beat them 1-0. To be honest, they really kicked lumps out of the Argentinians. But nonetheless, they got the result. And they've been a pretty strong force in African football over the years since then. Looking at their results coming into this competition, though, you can't really fancy them too much. They've lost a couple of games. They lost against Portugal, got hammered 5-1. That was just not so very long ago in March. They also lost at home to Paraguay. Not exactly the sort of result you want to take into a tournament, but they were only friendlies after all. Their last World Cup qualifier, they managed to beat Tunisia 4-1, and they drew away before that with the same team, Tunisia. But their last couple of games, they've looked a bit stronger, at least on paper. Moldova, a 1-0 victory at home to them, and a 2-2 draw, very creditable 2-2 draw away in Germany. So that makes them look like a reasonably good bet, you might say, to get through the group stages. They've obviously got Samuel Eto'o, we all know about, and even though he's not exactly a spring chicken, he certainly can spring an offside trap. We've got Asu Okoto, of course, we know from Spurs. Who else? Who are the big names? Well, perhaps there aren't quite as many. Alex Song, of course, formerly of Arsenal. Mbia, another top name, Makoun. So you're looking at the midfield. Really, the midfield's got a lot of kind of big names in the game, you might say. Looking at the rest of the team, is sort of Itangi is also a goalkeeper I've heard of quite a lot, but most of the names, I've got to say, are not really household names. That doesn't necessarily mean a thing, but if I had to tip another team to go through from Group A, it wouldn't necessarily be Cameroon. Might be Croatia though, because they've been on a bit of an unbeaten run prior to the tournament starting. Their most recent result, a 1-0 home victory over Australia. Before that, they beat Mali. That's not such a big feat, especially as they conceded a goal in the process. They managed a draw in Switzerland, and they beat Iceland. And the game against Iceland, in fact, was a World Cup qualifying playoff in November. So they beat them over the two legs, 2-0 at home, and got a 0-0 draw away. So Iceland, not exactly a mighty force in football, no disrespect intended, but that sort of gives you an idea of where Croatia are at. Obviously, there are a few names we know about. Eduardo, formerly of Arsenal, Jelavic, Olic, Mandzukic, who scored about 3 goals in the last Euro finals. Modric, obviously at Real Madrid now, but formerly with Spurs. Rakitic. There's quite a few names in there that are going to ring bells. Pleticosa, of course, has been linked with lots of clubs, and normally he doesn't move to half the clubs he gets linked with. Cerna, and Cor Luca, of course. He's obviously got a really good reputation. So plenty of players there that we know, and players that are gonna do pretty well. Some of them in this tournament. So then finally we've got Mexico. They're obviously, they're not going to be on home soil, but it's not going to be such a long jaunt for them down to Brazil. And their results coming into this not great. They've lost the last couple of games 1-0 at home to Portugal and Bosnia-Herzegovina. So not in fine fettle, quite the opposite. They did manage to beat Ecuador though, 3-1, and Israel 3-0. These are also quite recent friendlies. And prior to that, they got a draw with America, USA I mean, a draw with Nigeria, and beat the Korean Republic 4-0. So some, since the turn of the year, some quite good results. Apart from the last couple, they don't seem to be exactly on a roll right now, which might make them a bit circumspect, a little bit cautious in their approach. They've got some talent in the team. Obviously, Hernandez of Manchester United fame, Dos Santos used to play for Spurs back in the day. A lot of good players there, and it remains to be seen though whether they will actually deliver. I don't know. I mean, I think there's you've got to fancy Croatia out of the other teams, and most people are predicting that Mexico will in fact finish fourth. I'm not so sure. I think they may well give Croatia a run for their money for second spot. Cameroon obviously are going to make things difficult as well, but I think you've got to fancy from this group. You've got to fancy Brazil and Croatia to get into the knockout stages. So let's have a look at Group B now. So with Group B, we've got Australia, never renowned for doing well in World Cups, but they always get there obviously from being in a relatively easy qualifying group, although that's become a bit more difficult in recent times because they play against the likes of Korea and Japan nowadays, whereas back in the day they were just up against New Zealand and I don't know, the other countries involved, like Fiji or somebody, like pretty small islands, really. So the Aussies have been regulars at World Cup, so they've got that experience. And going into it, though, they got beaten by Croatia, who we were just talking about. They got beaten in that recent friendly. They managed a draw with South Africa, but then lost at home to Ecuador 4-3. So suggests a leaky defence, that sort of result. They managed to beat Costa Rica, who are also in the World Cup finals, and managed also an away victory against Canada 3-0. So that was quite a while back now. That was back in October of last year. So no one's really going to fancy Australia to go through, but they're a solid outfit. Tim Cahill, who whom I've met before. He's an excellent player still, even though he's playing in the MLS now. Let's not underestimate him. He's got a prodigious jump. He can out-jump nearly anyone, and he's only about 5'11", but he seems about 6'6" the way he jumps. Then other big names, Bresciano, obviously he's played in Serie A. All their players have got a fair amount of experience, but they're not household names, so they're going to be dark horses, seeing as we don't really know an awful lot about them. But anyway, let's not underestimate Australia. I'm certainly glad that England are not playing Australia, because that's the sort of team that we would really struggle to beat, I feel, because we always do. We always struggle to beat other English-speaking countries. Anyway, moving on to Chile, also in this group. Their recent form is up and down. They beat Northern Ireland in a recent friendly 2-0 and Egypt, but lost to Germany only 1-0, and it was away. Thrashed Costa Rica 4-0 and lost narrowly to Brazil 2-1 away. So that gives you an indication of how good Chile are going to be. And of course they beat England 2-0 back in November, and beat Ecuador as well around about the same time. That was a World Cup qualifier. So they're going to be formidable, let's face it, Chile. And looking at their squad, they've got, well, not as strong a squad as was expected because of injuries. So perhaps they're not worth banking on getting through to the knockout stage as a result of that. So obviously all the smart money is on Holland and Spain, and I'll come to Spain in a minute. But Holland first. Last couple of games, both victories against Ghana and Wales. Prior to that, a draw with Ecuador and a defeat against France. That was back in March. But before that, they only managed a 0-0 draw at home to Colombia. So going into it, they're averaging about 1.5 goals a game or less. Not what you'd expect from a Holland side that are renowned for their attacking flair. Looking at results, doesn't seem a lot of attacking flair going on. But they've got Dirk Kuyt and Robin van Persie, and of course Huntelaar. All these players, household names. Robin, still a fantastic winger. Nigel de Jong, Schneider. There's so much talent in that squad. Ron Vlaar at the back. And of course Vorm, who are sometimes called Worm for some unknown reason. Classy goalkeeper, as is Krul of Newcastle. There's a lot of individual talent in this team, and Guzman, let's not forget him. But so much individual talent doesn't make a good team, does it? And often Holland show us how a team can disintegrate despite having all the individual parts that don't always work together in unison. So I'm not necessarily expecting a faultless campaign from the Dutch, but I do expect them to get past Chile and Australia. They will finish second. Everyone obviously tipping Spain. They have lost a recent game. That was not that recent, but in November they lost to South Africa away. Aside from that, they've just been beating everyone. They play against Italy 1-0, Bolivia 2-0, El Salvador away 2-0, Equatorial Guinea 2-1. Obviously some of those teams that have played against are not sort of the best in the world, are they, by a long stretch? But Spain, you could certainly argue, are one of the best in the world, if not the best. Look at the goalkeepers, Casillas, De Gea and Reina, all top class keepers. Then you look through the back, Juan Fran, Azpilicueta, a fullback I really like a lot at Chelsea, Piqué, Ramos, Albiol. Who there do we not know? Iniesta, one of the best midfielders in the world. Fabregas, say no more on him. He does actually wear the number 10 for Spain, which is good for him, good for his ego. Xabi, Alonso. Obviously, all the jokes have been made about Xabi, who's not so shabby. Cazorla, of course, of Arsenal. Busquets, Torres up front. He's been in and out of form, but you know, basically he still knows where the back of the net is, as does Villa up front. So plenty of individuals and also a good team ethic. So I really do expect Spain to progress, and I don't know how it's all going to pan out, but you'd think they've got a good chance of making it all the way to the final, providing they don't meet Brazil along the way. But looking at Group C now, we've got Colombia. Colombia are on a bit of an unbeaten streak, but they're not necessarily playing top opposition all the time. They beat Jordan 3-0 recently. Then it was 3 draws against the likes of Senegal, Tunisia and Holland. An away victory in Belgium just before that showed their credentials, as did a 2-1 away victory in Paraguay. They also drew with Chile 3-3. So they are a team to be reckoned with, and looking at their squad, not particularly full of household names in my opinion. Yepes I've heard mentioned in dispatches, Vargas, Mondragon, couple of decent goalkeepers, but ultimately it's nothing to really get the pulse racing. Gutierrez up front, excellent player, but they're not household names, are they? But again, like I've said before, doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to produce on the big stage. Greece obviously have produced on the big stage when it came to the Euros, when they were surprise winners back in the day. But could they go out and win a World Cup, even though they're sort of acclimatised to this hot weather? I don't think so, but they did beat Bolivia on home soil. Their home soil, that is, Greece's home soil, 2-1. Recent results have seen them lose to Korea 2-0 and get draws against Portugal away, which is a good result in anyone's language, Nigeria at home and Romania away. So I think they're one of those teams that are pretty organised, tough to break down. They've always been traditionally like that. And looking through their team, I did notice a couple of players that have, well, certainly been playing a lot of international games over the years. So much experience there. Samaras up front, obviously, we know through his Celtic connection. Mitroglou, another famous name. Karagounis, obviously another big name, not in terms of how many letters are in it, although obviously Greek players do tend to have a lot of letters in their names, but a lot of talent as well. Katsiranis, easy for me to say, another player that has obviously had a lot of attention. So Greece, they're going to be tough opposition for the other two teams in this group. But let's look at the Ivory Coast instead. The Ivory Coast have gone into this tournament with form that has been up and down, let's say. 2-1 away winners at El Salvador, and unfortunately before that, in May they lost in Bosnia to Bosnia-Herzegovina 2-1. Got a draw away in Belgium and a draw in Senegal. Senegal, obviously a decent African side. They beat Senegal in a World Cup qualifier on home soil 3-1. Drew with Morocco and also lost to Mexico 4-1. So that would be a bit worrying. But that was nearly a year ago, back in August 2013. So I don't expect that's playing on their minds at all. And looking at their squad, they are very experienced, perhaps too experienced, some would say. A lot of people linking Serge Aurier, the number 17, with Arsenal. That's not yet happened. Kolo Touré, of course, an ex-Arsenal player, now moved on to Liverpool after a spell at Manchester City. And Zokora, we know him, of course, from his Premier League duties with Spurs. Yaya Touré, Man City legend, you might say now. Who else? Got Gervinho, another ex-Arsenal player, who's had a pretty good season by all accounts in Serie A. Drogba, still a top player on his day. Boni, he's a player I've got a lot of time for. I'm not going to quantify it in minutes, but I certainly do have a lot of time for him. And Solomon Kalou, formerly of Chelsea. So a lot of experience, especially in the forward line. So they're not a team I'd write off by any means. I'm always saying Ivory Coast are going to win the World Cup, and every time I've said it, I've been wrong. And this time I'm not going to say it. So who knows? They might actually do it without my blessing. But they're still strong. But no, I can't see it. I can see them getting through the group stage. I see them finishing second. But the eventual winners may well be Japan of this group. Look at their form going into this. They've managed to beat, well, Zambia, not a huge titan of the world game, but they beat them 4-3. They've also won in Costa Rica 3-1, beaten Cyprus, okay, no big deal there, and beaten New Zealand. But this was a really good result in Belgium, winning 3-2 away back in November. Okay, it was only a friendly, you might say, but still, a win is a win is a win. Okay, looking at their squad, the thing is, a lot of these names, and not all the names anyway, are going to jump out at you, but it doesn't mean they're not a good team, because that's one thing that the Japanese have in their favour. They really play as a unit. So Honda is a player that a lot of people focus on because he's good at in dead ball situations. Kakitani, another famous name in the Japanese game. Plenty to choose from there. Endo, who I've had the luck to actually meet, the number 7. He's also good in dead ball situations. So they've got a few options there. Won't necessarily just be Honda taking free kicks. I would imagine Endo would as well. Uchida, the number 2, has been heavily linked with Arsenal. Gonda, I think, is an excellent goalkeeper. He won't necessarily play, but he did really well in the Olympics for Japan. And yeah, Kiyotake in midfield, the number 8, he's played abroad as well, not just in Japan. So looking at that list of players, it may not make the other teams fearful, but they should be, because I certainly expect Japan to progress from this group. And as I said, I'd put them down as unexpected winners, because I don't think that many people are tipping them just now. Anyway, looking at the next group, Group D, Costa Rica in that group. Their most recent game was a 1-1 draw at home to the Republic of Ireland. Before that, they lost at home to Japan 3-1, beat Paraguay 2-1, and then it was 3 defeats in a row against Korea, against Chile, where they got hammered 4-0, and against Australia away. But they did manage to beat Mexico. So their form has been very much up and down. Looking at their squad, who do we know? We know Joel Campbell, the number 9, who's on Arsenal's books, but hasn't actually played for Arsenal yet, been loaned out. Aside from him, I'm sort of drawing a bit of a blank here with most of the Costa Rican squad, but their form's up and down. I think on their day they can be a bit of a handful. Oh, who else have we got in this group? Oh, I think it's a little known team by the name of England. Obviously, England's form has been a bit iffy in recent games. 2 draws in a row against Central and South American opposition. A 0-0 draw at home. Not at home. We're down as the home team because we are E as opposed to H. But a draw with Honduras. Not exactly a flattering draw, but obviously there was a lot of weather problems that probably affected our play, and some of the tackling in that game was absolutely horrendous. Then the 2-2 draw against Ecuador, again played in Miami, but we're not really playing that well, are we? I'm not too concerned about it because they are only friendlies. Glenn Johnson's form is a little bit concerning, so everyone says, but I still believe in Johnson. I think he's got a lot to offer. If anyone does drop out of the squad, I'd like to see Hodgson call up Flanagan, though, because I think he could do a really good job as a standing right back for Johnson, should Johnson's form not improve. But I think it will. Then we've beaten Peru 3-0, Denmark 1-0, but lost in Germany, to Germany back in November. So our form it's not going to set the world alight, is it? And looking at our squad, well, we all know it, so I probably shouldn't talk about it too much. Some youngsters in it, but we're not the youngest squad by a long stretch of the imagination. Players that excite me: Sterling. He needs to avoid getting red cards though, when the tournament kicks off in earnest. Obviously, Oxlade-Chamberlain is going to be injured for a large portion of the tournament, although Roy Hodgson is saying that he will play a part in the tournament. Let's hope so. At the moment, Henderson's playing in midfield alongside Gerrard. I think the pair of them work well together defensively, but I'm not sure what they offer from an attacking point of view. But then when you've got players like Sterling and Sturridge, maybe they can make their own breaks. And Lallana even. I'm not completely convinced by him, even though he's very creative. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure he's going to completely rise to the challenge, but I think Sterling certainly will. Rooney, he's had a lot of stick, but I'm not one of the people ready to put the boot into Rooney just yet. I think Rooney's got an awful lot to offer. His form may be slightly up and down, but I think it's just the weight of expectations. We expect a lot from him all the time, and he's a star player, but he can't deliver every single match, can he? So I think one of the pluses we've got is we've got one of the best goalkeepers in Joe Hart. He's not a player I always thought was a great, but I'm starting to think he actually is now. I think. Well, he doesn't worry me at all when shots come in. I think he's going to save them, and obviously makes himself big in the penalty area, and he's very vocal. Sometimes I had that against him because I thought he was a bit negative. I heard some of his shouts in one game, and I think that's why I wasn't so keen on him. But clearly, I was wrong about Joe Hart. So sorry, Joe. He's certainly the man for the big occasion, I feel. As is Gary Cahill. I don't think we could find a better centre-back than him. And then Leighton Baines, obviously a very good left-back. Alongside Cahill, Jagielka, some people are umming and ahhing about him, wondering whether or not he's quite up to the challenge. I would say I've seen Phil Jagielka over a number of years. I've seen him playing at different levels, and to me, he's always been a player you can rely upon. And if the need ever arose, he could even play in goal. I've seen him play in goal, and he's excellent. So it's nice to have such a versatile player in the squad as Jagielka, and I feel defensively we're going to be quite solid. And of course, Ross Barkley, I think he's going to be a bit of a handful if he can reach his top form. I'm not sure he's going to do it in this competition, but anyway, you've got to fancy us doing reasonably well. I think we're going to have too much for Costa Rica, barring a terrible upset. What about Italy? Because obviously that's their first game. We're looking at their form going into this competition. It's been quite close to appalling. No wins in quite a few games now. They drew with the mighty Luxembourg, 1-1, and drew with Republic of Ireland, who are an awful lot more mighty than Luxembourg. They lost away to Spain, but only by the single goal, and drew with Nigeria and Germany. So those two results not too bad, but it's the rest. Well, I wouldn't necessarily expect them to beat Ireland, but Luxembourg, fancy that. Well, I wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't fancy that at all. They've still got Buffon in goal. He's not going to be the easiest to score past, and he's still got the number 1 shirt. Chiellini, a lot of these players, we know them because they're ancient relics, a bit like a Colosseum. De Rossi in midfield. Pirlo, of course, I'm not even sure how old he is. I don't know. I'll have to check the Dead Sea Scrolls or something. Maybe they've got an idea of how old he is. Balotelli up front, I think, is their joker in the pack, in as much as he will be a serious handful no matter what's going on. He may well suffer from indiscipline, but he's got immense talent. Insigne, the number 22, one to look out for. He's been linked with Arsenal a lot. And Antonio Cassano, another one that has issues perhaps with indiscipline and temperament. So I think Italy might get a draw with England on the first game, but I have to say I fancy England to possibly edge past Italy, given that Italy's form coming into the competition is so poor. But if I had to go one way or the other and not sit on the fence, I'm going to say England. But if I'm going to be completely honest, I have to say that England are very likely to draw with Italy, because Italy, when it comes to the big competitions, they always seem to rise to the occasion. Anyway, looking at Uruguay, I think Uruguay is what they call it in Spanish. But anyway, looking at them, obviously going to be really tough opposition. But looking at their recent games, they beat Slovenia, Northern Ireland. They've not played the best of the best, have they? They drew against Austria away, drew with Jordan. That's not a great result. And obviously, they didn't have to really play at their best, because it was one of those World Cup qualifying playoffs. So they'd already done the hard work by beating Jordan away 5-0, and they beat Argentina in the World Cup qualifiers as well. So pretty tough, but they're very much up and down. They lost to Ecuador 1-0. So that squad, obviously, we all know Luis Suarez. He's had some injury problems. Diego Forlan playing in Japan nowadays. Cavani, lots of big names. Hernandez, there's Hernandez's everywhere, aren't there? And looking through it, most of their big names are all in the front line, in the forward line. So ultimately, you'd expect it's going to be a goal fest when Uruguay come to town, and come to town they certainly will. When we're looking at our fixtures, obviously we're kicking off, as I've already mentioned, 11 p.m. at night against Italy. By then we'll know how Uruguay have got on against Costa Rica. I'm fully expecting Uruguay to win that. So that leaves us with a lot of people saying a draw will be enough against Italy. That might be what we end up getting. Then we've got a bit of a break before we play our next game. That won't be until Thursday of the following week when we take on Uruguay at a more acceptable time to be watching football, 8 o'clock at night. I'm not seeing a victory against Uruguay, sorry to say. Don't see that happening. I think Uruguay will give us a very, very difficult match. We'll be lucky to draw, I feel. When you look at their firepower, but I'm sort of arguing with myself about this because on the other hand, I think we could beat Uruguay. They could beat us. It's very hard to predict that one. So I'm probably going to go for a draw on that. Italy will beat Costa Rica, and then it's all going to come down to the final game, which is Tuesday the 24th. Both games played simultaneously at a very awkward time, which is really annoying because a lot of people won't be able to see it if they're at work. But 24th of June, we take on Costa Rica, and Italy take on Uruguay. So I think it's all going to depend on that game. We will need to win it. We might need to win it by a certain number of goals, so it'll be down to our firepower. Uruguay, I expect to finish group leaders because I think they've got the strongest forward line, and it's going to be us or Italy finishing second. I'd like to say we're going to do it. Not convinced we will. I think we might end up finishing third, but it'll be on goal difference if we don't make it. So I hope this England team will prove me wrong. We had Theo Walcott in the squad. Obviously, I'd be feeling a lot more positive. But if you actually like this podcast or vlog or whatever it is, see, I still haven't decided. Do let me know about it because I might even get round to covering the other groups. But